Supporting my parents means sacrificing my own family's future. How can I choose between them? My parents moved from a developing country to North America when I was 4. My siblings were 2 and 6 months old. My dad worked hard to make a life for us, and my mom worked hard to ensure we didn't waste the opportunities they provided us. They also sent money home to help my grandparents, sometimes to the detriment of our family here. My sisters and I are all married with families now. My parents are getting ready to retire, and they want us to support them the way they supported our grandparents. The problem is we cannot afford to pay for everything here. Even with my parents' savings and my dad's pension, they cannot maintain their lifestyle while my dad works. However, with their money and ours combined, they can live like gods back home. We could sell their house and use that money to buy them a villa in a gated community. They could fly back to see us all the time. They could literally live in the top 1% there instead of scraping by here. The only problem is the grandkids. They want to see them all the time. They think that my sisters and I are exiling them. We're offering them a chance to have great lives in a country with no snow, where food costs are 1/4 to 1/6 those here, where healthcare is actually rated higher than it is here. We're looking at the next 20 years. When everything was said and done, I offered them the exact same amount they'd send their folks. It will buy their groceries every month, and that's it. They think I'm being stingy and mean. Am I the idiot for not being willing to give up my budget for my parents? Not the idiot. If they worked all their lives, they should have put aside enough to live once they retired. This whole ordeal of needing to pay for your parents' retirement is nonsense. They expect you to do the same, because they're missing some. Give whatever you're comfortable with, and that doesn't jeopardize your finances. If they want more, it's too bad for them. It's the consequence of their own actions. Break the cycle, or then you'll have to be them in 30 years, and ask for money for your children. I try not to judge other cultures from a place of ignorance, but the idea of future generations supporting previous generations is basically a freaking Ponzi scheme. It's such a bad way to build a society. Your parents are stubborn. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They didn't support your grandparents living in the States. They supported them living in your home country. You're being generous by offering to do the same. Your grandparents didn't have the luxury of being near you and your sisters during your childhood. Your parents did not pay to bring them here and support them here. Why should they expect any different? I will never be able to afford the retirement I want either, because my ideal retirement would mean a beautiful house in the Caribbean, a yacht to get intoxicated on, and a membership at the nicest golf course nearby. Probably ain't gonna happen. But I'm sure as heck not gonna make that anyone else's problem. Sorry, but it's a crap move to ship them off to the old country. You are the idiot. Why would elderly people want to go and live alone and not have close connections with family? You can just give them a reasonable budget you can afford. Why is there no middle ground? Downgrade from house to condo or small house. Give them a minimal allowance. They have money, clearly, just not crazy money. This is true, and Opie was brought here as a toddler. These people have probably been in their current country for 30+ years at this point. They have friends, family, and a life here. But Opie wants to send them back to a place where they haven't lived for decades because it's cheaper. It's just such a mean move. They aren't being sent home. They are home now. The feeling of being exiled seems legitimate. This is my biggest issue. Like your parents brought you here for a better life and you're just gonna go. Thanks now, bye. You are the idiot. They sacrificed everything to give you a leg up. They took care of their parents and now they need help, and in return, you ungrateful, selfish, entitled siblings want to send them back to where they escaped from. Really? Suck it up and do right by your parents. My partner, 41 male, and I, 34 female, moved into a new home recently. He's paying for the house as well as the vast majority of our expenses. He's well off and my net worth is about 3% of his. For context, in our home, we have a walk-in closet. Currently I use 60% of the closet. He uses 20% and 20% is unused and available for him to use. In addition to the closet space in our bedroom, we currently have 2 guest bedrooms with large closets. Prior to purchasing our new home, we lived separately. When moving here, I was very deliberate about which of my clothes I was bringing and used it as an opportunity to get rid of a ton of items of clothes that I no longer wanted. My partner has said to me, "Hey, I want us to go through your clothes and decide which ones we're keeping, and which ones you don't wear or use, and we should get rid of them." I responded, "Okay, we can, but I already did that. I only brought over the clothes I know I want to keep, so I don't think this is necessary, and won't lead to me getting rid of them." He responded that he still wanted to go through them. It's fine if we don't end up getting rid of anything, but also that he doesn't want to bring junk into our new home, and that I have too many clothes. He also offered that we could go through his things and do the same, but I said I don't have any problem with how many clothes he has, and I'm not concerned about what he keeps or doesn't keep. To me, this whole thing is unnecessary and I don't even see why it needs to be an issue. We have the space. I already did what he's asking me to do on my own. And also I have a hard time seeing why this even matters or is an issue. This isn't the first time this has come up. He's brought it up multiple times, leading to a similar conversation, though last night's was especially vitriolic. I got upset about it when we were discussing it last night, and said, Why can't I bring what I want into our new home? And he said, fine, I don't care, bring anything. And why don't you pay for everything too? And then he left, because he needed a break. Am I being unreasonable here? Eat it? I've always had a hard time determining the line between controlling and precise discipline, rigid with him. As one example, he wanted me to pick out all the furniture for our new home. Still, the way it had to be done was by creating a spreadsheet with specific columns, along with a specific priority for which rooms or items we were going to move forward with. And if I wanted to request to change those priorities or had an item that I wanted to purchase, I had to send it via email with an explanation of why I mekble change, etc. If I brought up something outside of these ways of doing it, it would lead to him getting exasperated or stressed. Paying for things came up with this as well, where he said if he's paying for it, this is the way he wants it done, and we need to look at it as a project, not to be haphazard, etc. I suppose someone could see it as organized and precise, though to me it feels intense. However, there are also a lot of ways in which he's very flexible and kind. For example, I'm definitely a little messier than him, and he cleans up or reorganizes things and doesn't get upset with me. Wow. And watch for it, it's my money and my way. If you're not sure, it's most likely controlling, and this is the tip of the iceberg. Been there, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Just to make it even clearer, this is the beginning of financial abuse, and I am sorry. But his reorganizing is just another way to be in control. Yeah, OP, that sounds very rigid and controlling. Having a discussion and making a list of furniture and other household necessities down to decor items is one thing, but basically making you file a request form and explaining your reasoning is wild. Do you think you're messy, or have all his little comments made you see yourself as messy because he does? Did you think you were messy, or were you ever embarrassed about your cleanliness or organizational style before you met him? Is he always just trying to help you be better by convincing you that you're inadequate and need to act the way he wants to get his approval? He also mentioned the money in his little tantrum when you didn't agree to get rid of your clothes. He is definitely controlling and using the fact that he makes so much more money to assert that control. You will be living in his house, which he pays for, so you'd better submit to his rules. He is going to use this against you every time you don't cooperate. Be aware of what you're signing up for by moving in with him. I wonder if it's too late for you to return to your old apartment. Last year I let my ex take our preschool son abroad to visit his family. It ended up being a huge nightmare, because he didn't bring our son home the day he told me he would, and no one would answer my calls. I was terrified, and I didn't want to ever relive that experience again. The reason they flew home later than my ex said was because my ex's dad had a heart attack. I understand it was a difficult situation and he didn't do it on purpose, but it's going to take time for me to trust him again. This year he's been telling our son he'll take him skiing. This would be another international trip, and there's no way in heck I'm going to let him take our son abroad again. So the trip isn't going to happen. We've been fighting over it for the last 3 months, because he's been trying to emotionally blackmail me into agreeing. Our son is very excited to go, but my ex has refused to tell him they're no longer going. Honestly, he shouldn't have told him they were going in the first place. So now I look like the bad guy, because I had to tell our son that they weren't going, and that his dad lied. He's devastated, and it took me hours to get him to stop crying when I first told him. So part of me really hates my ex right now. My ex is angry that I won't budge on the trip, and that I told our son he was lying, as our son is very upset with him. Am I the idiot? Everyone's the idiot here. Your ex messed up last year by not communicating what was happening. But other than this one incident, do you have any reason to believe he won't return with your son? I also think it's a bit unfair to frame it as your dad's lying to you, when part of the reason is, you don't trust him. You expect her to let her ex take a 4-year-old out of the country, after he went radio silent when he took him last year. She said no one answered her calls, so she couldn't trust them. No matter what happened, a quick call or text explaining the situation should have been sent. She thought her child was just gone. Her trust is broken, and you can't just glue it back together. It takes a lot to even let someone take your 4-year-old out of the country in the first place. That doesn't justify her telling the child your dad is lying, though. You are the idiot here from me. At the end of the day, the person suffering the most is your son. He no longer gets to go and experience the joys of skiing and misses out on a good father-son bonding opportunity. Plus, you've now damaged his trust in his father. The ex did lie, though. He knew that he wouldn't be able to take the son skiing because he knew that he wouldn't be able to get permission from OP, not the idiot. There's no excuse to not answer the phone or use the phone during an emergency. Period. When you're responsible for a child you share, it's irresponsible and selfish. And to be late and not call, while telling the child about the trip and not talking to you, while your 4-year-old doesn't need to go skiing in Europe, or wherever. Keep your child home. Teen mail, we'll have a birthday soon. I live with my dad. My parents are divorced. But there's a twist. They were already divorced when I was conceived. A couple of weeks later. Dad was clear he wanted to be in my life. Mom and he didn't get back together. While Mom was pregnant with me, she met her husband Dan. It started awkwardly. Especially when Dan showed up at the hospital when Mom was in labor, but Dad was in the delivery room. It got worse during Mom and Dan's engagement because he wanted to take me out of state for 4 nights without Mom. Dad needed to give permission for it to happen, but Dad said no. Dan argued that he would be my second dad, that I would grow up with 2 dads, and that he should be trusted to take me out of state for 4 nights. Dan was always talking badly about my dad and telling me about that incident and how Dad treated him like a lesser parent. He also spoke about Dad pushing him, Dan, out of the delivery room, which makes me think there's a lot of jealousy over that still too. He also mentioned the fact my parents were divorced before I came along. I hated Dan for doing that, and I'm loyal to my dad. I've rejected Dan in every possible way, and Dan blames my dad for that. My mom never told Dan to knock it off. She would also encourage us to spend time together. I made Dan's life heck when I was younger in retaliation for how he talked about my dad. I also made a few big scenes where Dan would try to make others believe he was my dad. I did this in front of my half-brother too. I probably hate Dan as much as Dan hates my dad. My half-brother has grown up knowing how I feel about Dan, and how Dan feels about my dad, so he hates my dad on Dan's behalf. He doesn't like how I treat Dan, which means we fight a lot. My half-brother tries to say Dan is a better dad, and that I should treat him better. We do not like each other. And I can honestly say I do not love or care about my half-brother, and I have zero loyalty to him. We never ever had a good relationship. We fight constantly about Dan and Dad. Our relationship, if you can even call it that, sank when I told my half-brother I would never like or respect Dan, and I would celebrate if he and Mom divorced and I would never see him again. My half-brother feels like Dan deserves better. I hated Mom's house, so last year Dad, on my behalf, asked the judge to let him have custody. I was interviewed and custody was changed, but I still have to go 1 weekend a month until I'm 18. My half-brother is turning 16 in May. Mom has promised him a birthday vacation. She wanted to check dates with me so we'd all be there, and I told her I wasn't going. I'm not celebrating her other son, and won't in the future either. She started crying and asking why we had to be like this, and she told me we're family and I should be there, because I might regret losing a brother one day. I told her I wasn't changing my mind, and she told me I was unfair to everyone. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Frankly, this seems a failure of all the parents involved here. No parent realized that you were the rope in this tug of war. Or maybe they did and they just kept pulling anyway. I guess I just don't understand how parents can be this blind and willfully ignorant of the impact that their anger can have on their kids. Sorry you're in this situation. That sounds just awful. Kind of a devil's advocate, but everyone's the idiot here in my opinion. All the parents are idiots for allowing their rivalry to bleed over to the kids, and also for allowing this nonsense to go on for 17 years. Parents who put their kids in the middle of their arguments are the worst idiots. Instead of allowing OP to enjoy 2 loving homes, they created a void in his life. The OP is an idiot because he's fighting a fight that should never have been his to fight. This has exacerbated the situation to where it is today. Instead of enjoying his childhood, he chose a side and has been unwilling to see alternative viewpoints. Ultimately, this is not OP's fault. He was brought in as a pawn by the parents. But the fact that he's unwilling to bend and nurture any sort of relationship with his mother's side of the family is on him. Life is about choices, and he chose not to give Mom or Dan a chance. Nobody is innocent in this situation. My daughter recently started college in person, and part of her expenses is covered by a meal plan. She's 19 and her first year of college was commuting because of her anxiety. She decided to attend college in person this year and stayed in the dorms. The problem is her food card isn't working. It can easily be fixed by contacting the college dining services, but she refuses to talk to them. She needs to get a new one since this one is bent. My daughter has pretty bad anxiety, especially around making phone calls and talking to people in authority. I've told her repeatedly that all she needs to do is go to the dining services office, but she won't do it. As a result, she's been skipping meals and calling me, upset that she's hungry. I've repeatedly expressed that she needs to handle this and talk to the people. I've refused to step in and handle it for her. I got a call today asking me to give her some money to buy food at Walmart. I told her no and told her to go talk to the people. This resulted in an argument, and she thought I was a huge idiot. My spouse thinks I'm being too harsh and should send money or fix it for her. You are the idiot. She needs to find out what mental health services are available to her. When I was her age, this would have seemed like an impossibly daunting task. My father asked me to take out a book from my college library for him, and I refused because I was too scared to do so. If she's skipping meals rather than go ask for help, what she needs to do is not as easy as you think. Is there an email address for dining services? Maybe contacting them that way would be better, and once they tell her to come in, maybe she'll be able to do that. You have to help her. Tough love does not fix issues. It just causes relationship issues. Reading your comment makes me feel as if we're doomed as a species. It's a bent dining hall card. Holy literal heck. Not the idiot. A college degree won't matter if your daughter can't manage very minor confrontations. If she can't talk to somebody at a desk, I wouldn't waste tuition money on her, let alone give her extra food money. Exactly. I just can't see Opie's daughter as a victim. She has her college room, classes and meals all paid for. But she wants more because she's too anxious to call someone to fix her meal card. How will she survive in college and talk to her advisors, professors, etc., if she can't even talk to someone so she won't starve? She can't have mommy hold her hand for the most basic tasks forever, and it will do more harm than good for a parent to step in. She's an adult and she can make one phone call. The more she does it, the easier it will get.